All right, hello and good evening, everyone. So I'd like to ask everyone to turn off their video cameras except for our panelists. And then we want to make sure that both of the interpreters have their microphones on. So if you see some of the video cameras turning off at this point in time, don't worry, because people will be coming back at a later point. But if you have the ability to be able to turn off your video camera, please do so now. So if you have the ability to turn off your video camera and you are not one of the panelists for this evening, please turn your video camera off. Perfect. So it looks like we have everyone here. So you see that there are individuals who are here serving as our panelists. This is not going to be a webinar. So don't worry that we had the opportunity for you to ask our panelists questions later on, but you will be seeing their video when they're answering the questions. Looks like we just had one more person join us. So we'll have you turn off your video camera, Lloyd. Perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. My name is Jacob Salem, and I will be serving as the moderator for tonight's event. And we're thrilled to have our panelists with us this evening. So I'll talk about the format for this evening and what tonight's going to look like. We'll be asking them questions about the high holidays, about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and the different holidays that we celebrate. And we have our educators, our Jewish educators and rabbis who are here on our panel to be able to talk a little bit more about that tonight with us. So if we could spotlight Marla now, we'll have Marla introduce herself. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here. My name is Marla. I grew up in New York, just outside of Long Island, outside of New York City in Long Island. And, you know, my family and I grew up conservative. I come from a religious family. I went to a Hebrew school, and I also went to Hebrew high school as well. And I was involved with synagogue, and you know, my relatives, my extended family would always get together and just really engage in the practices of Jewish life. And when I got older, I wanted to really study more about my own Jewish roots and my own Jewish identity. So I decided to, by choice, pursue my graduate studies. And I went to a conservative rabbinical school, and then was involved in the master's program there. And that's really where it all started for me, and getting me involved in a leadership role here within the deaf community as it relates to what it is that I've learned. So that's a little bit about who I am. Hello, everyone. My name is Ellen Roth, and I was born and raised in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. And I come from, a strong Orthodox community. My parents are both deaf. And so I was a part of the Jewish community, but also the deaf community in my schooling and my upbringing. I talked to my parents about my, Jewish identity, and my father is from an Orthodox family. My mother comes from a more conservative family. And, my father had talked about it being really inaccessible for us. At that time, we really didn't have any vocabulary for making sure that we had access to, really that part of who we were. And then I moved to Queens, and my home was actually right in front of the yeshiva, the school there. And I talked to my father about that and the fact that we lived right in front of the temple. But my father said, that's really more for the hearing community. That's not really anything that we know about. And, I really was a part of the deaf community at that time. And then you had ASL that started to be recognized, and I learned it was part of the deaf community. And then it wasn't until the 40s where I hurt my back and I couldn't walk. And the rabbi, who was just 20 minutes from my home,
Rabbi Goldhammer,
was a famous healer. And I
Allah.
went to him because I needed help. And I wasn't sure if I should do surgery or not. So I just called the rabbi and said, I'm not really religious. I haven't really gone to temple. I'm familiar with the high holidays and I'm Jewish, but other than that, really haven't done much. So I just called the rabbi, and the rabbi welcomed me there. And I talked to him about needing his help and what it is that I could do. And he talked to me about prayer. And, in order to be able to walk, to be able to ski and to bike, I was willing to do anything. So that was really the starting point for me. That then I told the doctors that I don't want to do surgery. I want to be able to do what it is that he talked to me about. And then I thought about maybe even studying to become a rabbi. But then he really, encouraged me to do that. And I thought, well, I don't know if I can. But he said that you really need to claim your roots. And really the rest is history from there after having that conversation. But I'm glad to be here this evening. I'm looking forward to sharing in whatever capacity I can.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I am thrilled to be here with all these wonderful people. I am Darby. This is my sign name. I was born in New York City. So we have a lot of New York Jews here on the panel. Not surprising, maybe. My parents are both deaf. My first Jewish experience, I remember being at Beth Or for the Deaf, the temple in Queens. Maybe some of you have been there. And my family was part of the Reform movement. That's how I grew up. And, graduated high school and tried different things, traveled around the world, learned about different cultures. And I just had this sort of burning desire, burning need to come back to my roots. And so it was time for me to go back home. And really what that meant was back to my Jewish roots. To understand myself better and Judaism better, I grew up Reform, but I didn't understand what it all meant. I didn't understand the history fully. And so I had that burning desire to go back home. And so I started to study. I thought graduate school would be enough. So I got a graduate degree, and that time I realized that as I learned, all of this felt so important, and yet spiritually I wasn't yet satisfied. And so, I wanted that spirituality, which meant that, I wanted to go to rabbinical school. So I then, after rabbinical school, worked for the Jewish community in different synagogues all over. And so now I am a rabbi, and that's me.
All right. Rabbi Sudakov?
Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here. I am Yehoshua Sudakov. I was born in Los Angeles, California. I think I'm the only one from the West who's on this panel. Everyone else is from the East. So I grew up in LA. I went to high school in Toronto, Canada. There was a Jewish boys' high school there. And then I went to CSUN for 2 years. And I was trying to decide, what I wanted my major to be. And I decided I wanted to be a rabbi. And of course, CSUN didn't have rabbinical school. So I went to Crown Heights, like Ellen. I lived there for 3 years and loved it so much. Got married and then moved to Israel. So now I live in Israel. And I just want to add that I got my rabbinical degree in Brooklyn, New York. So I'm very excited to be here with you all.
Great. Wow. Such an esteemed panel we have here. I'm from New Jersey, so not too far from New York. But I do want to thank the Jewish Deaf Congress for hosting this event and for having the Gallaudet Hillel as well as the Jewish Deaf Resource Center serving as co-sponsors for tonight. I would like to ask you a question here because people may be familiar with this and may not be familiar with this, but the question that I wanted to ask is, what is Rosh Hashanah and what is Yom Kippur? So we have people who may know about it, but some who may not. Does anybody want to start by answering that question for us tonight? Yeah, Ellen?
So basically,
just making sure that we spotlight the right person. Oh, there we go.
Great. Basically, Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the year. In Hebrew, it means the head of the year. Yom Kippur, however we want to sign this, is the end of that 10 days of repentance. And I actually don't know what Yom Kippur means in Hebrew. Maybe one of the other panelists can answer that.
Does anybody want to follow up on what Ellen has shared?
Right, so.
Okay. Yeah, Marla, did you want to share something? I think Marla might have had her hand up.
You're asking about the meaning of the word Yom Kippur? Is
Yeah.
that what she's asking?
Yes, so I was asking to talk a little bit for you to talk a little bit more about the two.
So Yom Kippur actually means the Day of Atonement. That's what the Hebrew actually means. So Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, how do I say this? I'd say the meaning for me, you know, it's a time of contemplation and of reflection. Jewish life is full of different cycles throughout the year, life cycle events. And this offers us the opportunity to reflect about our lives. So both physically and spiritually, because the two are connected and both of them are very powerful. And it's a very powerful time for us. It's a window of opportunity that we really can take the time to reflect and think about the past year, do a little bit of unpacking. How have we behaved? Who have we been toward ourselves and toward other people? So that is really the content of the high holidays. Now, some people think that it's a full celebration as well as a time of mourning. And it is a combination of both, which is what makes it very unique and what makes these very special holidays. And I'll let other people comment, but for now, I'd say that that is it in a nutshell, the content of the high holidays. So yeah. And I would agree, I will just expand on that a little bit. On what Ellen shared. So Rosh Hashanah is, yes, the new year, and it is a happy time. Now, Judaism actually has 4 New Years, but we won't talk about that. That's for another panel or another topic. Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement, and it is a time when we atone. Now, all Jewish holidays actually have different levels of meaning, different depths of meaning. And we could ask, what's the history of this holiday? And we could talk about the history. We could ask what the religious significance is of that holiday. And we could talk about the religious significance. So we have history, religion, spirit. What is the spirit behind the religion and the spirit behind this holiday? So each holiday has all of these various components, and we don't have time to talk about all of them, but I will just add one thing to what Marla explained, and she did say it's a very important Jewish holiday, which is the case, and in America we call it the high holidays. And we call it the high holidays because it is the most significant time of year and the most significant holiday. And the Jewish phrase that I like a little bit better in Hebrew is Yamim Noraim. And that actually means the days of awe. So that's very inspiring, the days of awe. So those 10 days are very powerful. And if we can get in touch with the, all of it, the religious piece, history piece, the spiritual piece, it can be life-changing and really experience the awe of that. And of course I could expand on that, but I will let others jump in.
Right, just waiting for the camera. Am I spotlighted? There we go. So for the high holidays, is there any relation to those events or those holidays or not? Yeah, Rabbi Darby?
All right, I'm happy to jump in and just add a little bit to that. So no, they aren't the same holiday, but they are in the same season and in the same time period, and they are connected, right? So they're connected with one another, but they are not the same holiday. So the New Year is a happy time. It's a little bit of a lighter holiday, more joyous holiday. It's the beginning of the year. And it's similar to January 1st in America, where people party a little bit. And it's the new year when you make some promises about what you're going to do for the following year, lose weight, be outside more. So that's Rosh Hashanah, and that is similar to the secular New Year. But Yom Kippur is a time of true reflection about who we each are, who I am, what does my life look like? And Judaism teaches us that we must envision our best selves. What does the best version of ourselves look like? So what is the best Darby? Who can I be? And, you know, we ask ourselves every year, am I living my best self right now? Am I living my best self? And we aren't ever truly living our best selves. You know, for me, you know, of course, I yell at my children once in a while. There's things that I need to improve on. And so Yom Kippur is forcing us to do that kind of reflection. Who have I been? Who have I been being? What has my behavior been this past year? Have I met my own expectations for myself? How can I actually improve for next year? And so this is our time to really improve ourselves as human beings and as Jews and really as citizens of the world. So that's my 2 cents there.
All right, Rabbi Sudikoff?
I just want to add to what Darby said. So yes, they are 2 separate holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and they do have very different meanings. Rosh Hashanah is the day when we consider our relationship with God. That is when God created the world 5,880 years ago. And so on that day, that is the day that God created us. And so the question is, what are we doing here? And then we have the 10 days of Teshuva. So then we're looking at our behavior, like Darby said. It's not just about God and our relationship with God, but who are we as humans on this earth? And so Rosh Hashanah is more about the relationship with God, and Yom Kippur is more about our relationship with ourselves.
Just waiting for the camera. So during the high holidays and at the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, I mean, how is it that we go about celebrating the 2 holidays? What typically is a part of that experience? Yeah, Rabbi Sudikoff?
Well, obviously food. All Jewish holidays have to have food. And we do have special food that we eat as part that is symbolic of the new year. We mark it with blessings and so forth, and we can go into that in more depth later, but we also have prayers. We come together as a family and we consider our own mission in our lives and our relationships with others. So that's how we celebrate the holiday. Anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, Marla and then Rabbi Darby.
So yes, absolutely. Growing up, my first exposure with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur were with my family. And obviously, you know, we would, you know, get up whenever the start of the holiday was. It's always a different day depending on the year, but we would get up, make sure that we, you know, were dressed appropriately for synagogue, and we would go to synagogue. And for me growing up, it was boring. I remember that feeling of just being completely restless, of seeing people with their prayer books. I took note that they would sit and they would stand, but I didn't understand any of it. And then when I went to the Jewish Theological Seminary for my master's degree, that's when I really learned the power of liturgy, and just how much meaning there is in the holidays, just the depth of meaning. And then I studied more, and I looked forward to going to synagogue and looked forward to reading about the different prayers, because the different prayers talk about our different relationships with God. And as Rabbi Sudikoff explained, our relationship with the world. God is the king of the world, and that's just such a powerful concept, the supreme, leader of the world. And we learn that through the liturgy. It's just awesome. So I've always now, in my adulthood, looked forward to going to synagogue. And every year, the words are the same, right? Imagine Jews all over the world say the same words, and yet it is so powerful each year. And we see those words and experience those words differently each year. And our understanding is at just another deeper level each year, and it's very inspiring. And so that's what we do each year on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
Rabbi Darby, and then Ellen.
Thank you. And again, I'll just expand on that a little bit, just add to what Marla was saying. She said it's the same words, and yet our perceptions change, and we learn something new every year. So we are reciting the same words. And the question really was, how do you celebrate Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? And so I want to just mention the 10 days in between the two holidays. So there's always 10 days, and we call these the Aseret Yemini Teshuva. And that actually means the 10 days of Teshuva. So that word Teshuva is so important for understanding the actual purpose behind the high holidays. So Teshuva means that, we do what God commands us, right? And during those 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we need to do Teshuva. And many in the Jewish community actually start that process 1 month prior to Rosh Hashanah. So the first day of the month of Elul is the start of the process of Teshuva. And then every day for a full month. And many people think that it has to do with the ram's horn and the shofar, but that's not the case. It's actually every day for a full month. And that is because it reminds us that Rosh Hashanah is coming and that we really need to do the deep work of Teshuva. And so I hope you're really curious now what Teshuva is, so I will explain. So a lot of people think that Yom Kippur is only solemn and it's all about saying sorry. But Teshuva actually means, and it doesn't actually mean atonement fully. It means return. Return back. And so, many people may ask, where do you go? Where are you returning to? And that is the question. Where are you? Where are you going? Who are you and who do you want to become? So back, meaning back to that vision of your best self, because none of us are perfect. We're all human, right? But we all have goals to improve ourselves every year and to be the best person we can be. And so how can I become that best person? And so maybe last year I wasn't on track, following my goals. So during this time of Teshuvah, I recognized that I was off the path and I can get back on the path and come back to myself. And so this is really a reorientation of ourselves.
Okay, Ellen?
Thank you. Thank you to Marla and to Darby. So Rosh Hashanah, I remember as a very fun time of year. Beth Or was the synagogue, and so many Jewish people, you know, went to that synagogue. I grew up in New York City. It was very diverse. It was not all white. And Beth Or was definitely all Jewish. So I remember that the rabbi would sign just a little bit. And it was hard to understand. But downstairs, everybody played. And so at the time, I had no understanding of the holiday. It was just fun to be with our community. Many, many years later, when I learned more, I mean, here, all I saw was, you know, Jews dressing in black and dressing in, you know, very solemn uniform, basically. And then when I learned more about Judaism, it was just so incredibly colorful. So when I was in rabbinical school, I read a lot. And each year I read, as Marla and Darby mentioned, the same texts. And then each year I would understand it at a more deep level. I would see something that I hadn't seen the years before. And I did only 3 years. I was supposed to do 4 or 5, but I did 3. And so Teshuva is a very important concept, you know, returning to ourselves. Because we out in the world make mistakes and want to make sure that we, you know, obviously we know ourselves best, right? And so returning to our best selves. And Yom Kippur is about atonement. You know, some people say atonement is at one with me, if you break up the word, at one with me. So being more connected with yourself and with God. Because basically we open the book of life on Rosh Hashanah, and that is when we are the closest to heaven. And that is when we are the most vulnerable and open, and God knows the most about us. You know, you can't fool yourself. You can't fool God. You know, every year we say we're going to do better and we're going to be God-like, and that is our goal. So when I graduated from rabbinical school, I was gifted a Torah. And at the time, I saw it as just a book of God, but now I realize it's God's love letter to us. And, you know, everything that we need, we get from there. I'll stop it there for the moment.
Marla?
So just thinking about Rosh Hashanah and what we do in the afternoon service, for example, during Mincha, people gather in the synagogue and they've got a bowl of water with breadcrumbs, and this is tashlich. Tashlich is a symbolic way of ridding ourselves or casting off ourselves from our sins. Like Darby was saying, the importance of coming back to ourselves or returning back to ourselves. And, you know, I love how we sign that. You know, sometimes we are off track and we need to get back on track. And it doesn't happen overnight. And that's why we have 10 days of deep, deep reflection to bring ourselves back to ourselves. And it is very physical. And if you remember, I mentioned earlier that Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are both spiritual and physical experiences. And you need those sometimes physical reminders. So Tashlich is one of those ways that we have a physical reminder of ridding ourselves of our transgressions. And so that's just one of those things that we do during Rosh Hashanah and Kippur.
So in listening in to all that you've shared about the meaning and significance for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, I think that it's great to see how this has been celebrated all across the United States. When talking about Yom Kippur and we look at the whole concept of fasting with this holiday, how long does that typically last where you must fast? And what is it that we typically do during that time of fasting? So that's one part of my question. And then I have a follow-up part to that question, but who wants to answer that piece first? Maybe I should answer if no one else wants to. Ellen?
So we've got the spiritual aspect as well as the physical aspect of fasting. And that helps us release ourselves from physical pleasures, physical activities. We're not permitted to even wear shoes or leather shoes, excuse me. We wear white. We, then are not distracted by other things in our environment. We pray and we empty our bodies. And so that's, eating is pleasurable. And so we basically take a break from that. We think about God, we think about ourselves very deeply, and we release ourselves for a brief time from everyday living and pleasures. And Ellen said that beautifully, and I just want to share a quote that I heard from a very wise rabbi that says, "I don't fast on Yom Kippur. I just have no time to eat," which is pretty much true. I'm so busy praying and thinking about my relationship with God that I don't have time to eat, which, that is true, right? I mean, it's kind of ironic that Jews don't have time to eat because we always eat, but it's really a full body and soul experience.
Do we have is the video on me? Is it spotlighted? Okay. So, that's for 24 hours where you don't engage in eating, and you cannot wear leather shoes. So why is it that you cannot wear leather? What's the reason behind not being able to wear leather? Ellen?
Vanity, right? So it's important to be humble and modest. And I also think that maybe because it's not okay to kill animals, but I think that it basically comes down to modesty.
Rabbi Darby?
I would agree. I'll just add to that as well that leather, way back when in biblical times, was really considered a luxury and also a symbol of comfort. So leather shoes were the best and most comfortable shoes at the time. Some people had it, some people couldn't afford it. And not wearing leather puts us on the same playing field and in the same position as everyone else. We're all asking the same questions about ourselves. And in fact, I liked Rabbi Sudakov's answer as well. I learned also myself from one teacher that the day as rabbis and as Jews, we are as close to God as we are any other day. But we are expressing our love, expressing our commitment to refocus ourselves and put ourselves on the right path. And that means that we feel closer than we do the rest of the year, when in actuality we aren't closer. On Yom Kippur, it is like the angels who are already close to God give us that experience. We get a little bit of a taste of what the angels experience on that day, because we're not eating and the angels don't eat. And so we get a little bit of that experience.
And I'd just like to ask the follow-up part of my question. So maybe this can be something that you add to your response. So you can't eat or drink for 24 hours. But for people who have medical issues, can they fast? I mean, what is that like for people who have medical issues? What types of arrangements are there.
So there's questions, you know, if somebody's taking medication and they have physical issues, they are exempt from fasting. But related to one prayer I just remember from going to synagogue almost every Shabbos, and that prayer is called the Amidah. That is the standing prayer. So during that prayer, we stand. There's also another prayer where we usually stand, and we also bend our knee. And we lift ourselves on our toes 3 times. So when Darby was talking about the angels, I thought about that prayer, the Kedusha, where you bring yourself closer to the angels. So I just wanted to mention that. And spotlight on Darby to spell this. Yeah, so this is the 3rd blessing in the Amidah, and that is called the Kedusha. Right, so thank you, Rabbi Darby, for reminding me of the name. So with our feet, we raise ourselves on our toes and we say the words holy, holy, holy as part of the Kedusha, which the Kedusha actually means holy. And we bring ourselves closer to the angels. So I just wanted to put it out there in regard to that one prayer.
Great. Now you know that as we get closer to preparing for the holidays and to even preparing for that fasting to start, how best should people engage in that preparation? Rabbi Darby?
So I just want to add to Jacob's comment about people who have medical issues or medical challenges. I think that often at this time of year, we think about those who struggle, who may have eating disorders, because food is really a highly emotional concept for many people. And food is not always that easy. And so fasting can be a big challenge. And I really believe that Jewish liturgy and literature is very clear that if anyone struggles with any medical issue, if they're pregnant or they have an eating disorder, they are exempt from fasting. They're actually not allowed to fast because they would put their own health and their own life at risk. So it's not just that they're exempt, it's that they are not allowed. They are required to eat and drink. So please do not feel that you have a duty to fast. If it's going to cause danger to you, you're not even allowed. So 24 hours, technically a little bit longer, but before Kol Nidre, that's sundown on Yom Kippur. It's actually the name of a prayer, but we call the service Kol Nidre. So it's before sundown on Yom Kippur, we start fasting. So right before Kol Nidre, and depending on which denomination you follow, you are supposed to wait 42 or 43 minutes after sundown the next day to break the fast. So the fast can be 25 to 26 hours, and if you're following the letter of the law. So that is a full day and a little bit more. So planning, I mean, you're raising a very important question. It's very important to hydrate 1 month before even, just to drink a lot of water. If you are a coffee lover like me, I love to drink coffee every day. When you are fasting, famously, it causes headaches because you're not drinking coffee. So we blow the shofar every day for the month of Elul, and for what I do is I wean myself off of coffee and I start drinking maybe a little bit of decaf, more water, and that will help your fast go better. Now, one thing I never fully understood is that we have a word called Zom Kol on Yom Kippur. That actually means have an easy fast. Basically, good luck. I hope the fast isn't too challenging. Never really understood that concept because the fast is not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be challenging. So have an easy fast is what we say. But, that fast really does cause us to have some realizations and, to realize that we are dependent on the world and dependent on other people. Just that 24 hours, it changes everything in your body. And it is a powerful reminder of how dependent we are on the universe and on the world and on God for food and for other people to grow that food or make that food. And so that is that on Yom Kippur.
So I'm actually going to give you 3 questions, so feel free to respond to these before we turn it over to the audience to ask their questions. So first, what is it that we say to people? Do we say, even like Happy New Year for Rosh Hashanah, or what's the typical saying that we use? And the same is true for Yom Kippur. What do we typically say during that holiday? And we oftentimes will go about asking for forgiveness during Yom Kippur. And when we've wronged someone or hurt someone, we ask for forgiveness. And if they don't forgive you when you come to them to ask them for forgiveness, what do we do? And then the third question that I have is that as we approach the end of fasting, how do we go about breaking that fast? And it almost sounds like breakfast when you think about it. So maybe if you want to talk more about what it is that we do there, those are the 3 questions that I have for all of you. And maybe we can have Rabbi Sudakov answer first.
Sure. Am I spotlighted? Okay, great. So I actually wanted to respond to what Darby said is, why do we say have an easy fast? And I think that one answer maybe is that the purpose of the fast is not to actually struggle, in my mind. I think it has 2 pieces. One is letting go from our daily lives, our daily comforts and customs of eating and wearing shoes, etc. So that's one purpose. The second is really to connect with the divine. So to connect with the Spirit of God and to focus on that connection. And so really for me, for example, I don't even feel like I'm fasting. If I'm not connected with God and not connected with God's Spirit, then I think it would be a struggle. And so I think when we say have an easy fast, it's to say, may you connect with God and may you have that easy connection. And so we always say also on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, have a sweet new year. So we really always say that with everything we experience in life, have a sweet new year, or have, we add this sweetness with our actions, with our perceptions, and so forth. Anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, Ellen?
Am I spotlighted?
Yes.
That was a beautiful answer. I love that. A sweet new year. Absolutely. And Darby is right about fasting, right? So if I'm connected and really deep in meditation and in prayer, I will forget about food. And so it isn't really, it's about giving up our addictions maybe, or our obsessions with food, or our demands. And so really for 24, 25 hours, deep in thought and reflection. One thing Darby also said about medical conditions and those who, have a medical condition that they would put themselves in danger. So Jewish law, really one of the most important laws, is to save a life. To save a life is to save the world. And so even, on Shabbat, we take a moment out to relax. But if you're sick and if we need to save a life, then we can get in a car and drive to the emergency room, because that trumps all laws. So, and same thing on Yom Kippur. So many people decide not to, to fast, don't eat or drink. Others sometimes choose not to eat, but they do drink water. And I don't know if there's any right or wrong here, but some people do choose. So I actually drink coffee, and I don't stop drinking coffee because I wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't be able to only drink water. And I want to respond to Jacob's second question. Am I spotlighted? The interpreter set? Okay, good. I want to answer Jacob's question, the second question about how we actually approach a person and ask them for forgiveness. Judaism teaches us that when we ask for forgiveness, it's not just I'm sorry, simple like that, but rather it requires very deep reflection and making sure that it is completely authentic and that our heart is truly in this request. And that is what the holidays are about. Really, being planful and thoughtful before we approach someone, and really being vulnerable and authentically asking for forgiveness. And we don't give up if they say no the first time. We do it a second and a third time. So we are required, if we're following the letter of the law, to ask for forgiveness 3 times. And if we are turned down all 3 times, we know that we truly, authentically in our hearts have asked for forgiveness, and God will forgive us, and we move on. That's my understanding. And from Exodus, I think maybe it was Exodus 21, talks about an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, that phrase, hand for a hand, etc., foot for a foot. And it says a burn for a burn. It actually goes on and on and on. If you all remember this phrase, I believe it's from Exodus. So, there's a interesting argument between 2 Jews in regard to this context. And it really teaches us that during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we're asking for forgiveness. And yet this phrase here looks like it's, revengeful. And I think that people misunderstand that. It's really more about forcing ourselves to think about the damage that we do when we do hurt someone. So when we harm someone else, it's forcing us to think about how, that would harm us too. So basically that we beg for forgiveness. And we need to do Teshuva, to come back to ourselves, to repent and repair. And so to really deeply reflect upon that. And that's the meaning that I see of that phrase. And I think it's so interesting that, that's aligned with our holiday.
Okay. So we wanted to be flexible because of the fact that we know that our community often operates on Deaf Standard Time and takes a little bit more time to engage in these types of conversations. So we're going to let you answer these questions before we turn it over to the audience. But I realize that questions are being sent to me. I'd rather that people send them in to Karita or to Leora, and then we will field the questions from there. But if you could start thinking about some of the questions that you have, send them to the 2 women that I've just specified, and then we will make sure to get your questions across to our panelists.
Yeah, so everything Marla said, I would agree. And I would just also add that people often think that Yom Kippur means that we will be forgiven for everything, for all of our transgressions and our mistakes from the past year. And so a lot of people go to synagogue, they pray, they repent, they fast, and they think that they are clear, and it's not so. The text is clear that going to services on Yom Kippur and repenting does not forgive you. If you have done damage, if there is damage between you and another person, if you have fought and hurt them, then you need to resolve that yourself. You need to take care of your own business. God will not take care of that for you. So we are repenting for our transgressions against ourselves and God. But if there are transgressions against another person, then we are required to go to them directly and work it out with them. Like Marla said, to ask for forgiveness 3 times. And if after the 3rd time they still don't grant forgiveness, then we are told that we are forgiven.
All right, Ellen, I saw your hand up, so we will go to you next. I know that there's a lot that people want to share, but we'll turn it over to Ellen and then we'll go from there. So yeah, Ellen. Oh, give me 1 second. Let's spotlight Ellen.
Just very briefly, everyone made just wonderful points. And I just want to mention a little bit about Halacha, which is Jewish law. And those are the list of all of our responsibilities. So personal responsibility and accountability. And there are 3,000 years of, I mean, really 3,000 years ahead of us in the secular community. And so really we are expected not to just do this once a year, but every single day, little by little, and then take stock at the beginning of the year. And so the Jewish law is just wonderful. Some have been brought to, American law, like eye for an eye, being compassionate. Instead, we, are fined amount of money. And now a lot of people have been talking about restorative justice, and that actually comes from Jewish law and an old story in Exodus. And really, so we're seeing a lot of connections and bringing those laws from Judaism, from Halacha, all of our accountabilities, personal responsibilities to American law. So thank you so much for watching.
So wow, time has really flown by this evening, which means that, we can't disregard any questions from our audience. We want to make sure that we get through those questions as well. Thank you for the people who are helping me field these questions. The first question is this recorded and will this be shared? So as long as you've registered, we will let the JRDC figure out how they're going to disseminate the recording from tonight's event. I will start with having David, who had his question. And would you prefer to ask the question yourself, David Michalowski, or would you want me to ask the question to the group for you? Okay, can we spotlight David Michalowski? We're giving our team time to find David. Can you actually turn your video camera on? There you are. All right. 1 second before you start responding, we want to be able to spotlight you first. Hello, everyone. I see a lot of my old friends here. Hi, Marla. Hi, everyone else. Hi, Ellen. So my question is that when we talk about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and blowing the shofar, how do we, really take a part of that full action when we can't hear the actual shofar blowing? All right, so does anyone want to answer David's question? Rabbi Sudikoff.
Am I spotlighted? Okay, great. So I think, first of all, the shofar is, I would say, old technology, right? We have new technology today, like an alarm clock, for example. The purpose of the shofar is to wake us up like an alarm does in the morning, to have something different catch our attention. Now, obviously, the alarm clock is for hearing people, and we have alarm clocks for deaf people that vibrate. So often, when we celebrate Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah in our synagogue, we have deaf people come up to actually put their hands on the shofar so that they can feel the vibrations and they can really, wake themselves up to see that this day is a special day and it's something different today. And so that's how we actually accomplish that mitzvah.
So I hope that was, a sufficient answer to your question, David. And I'm now looking at all the other questions, feeling bad for our panelists because there's so many questions that people want to ask. So the next question is, does it make a difference if a holiday starts on Shabbat? Anyone? Anyone want to answer that question? Yeah, Rabbi Darby?
I would say yes, it does. So the differences can be very subtle. There are some prayers that we add on Shabbat to recognize that it is Shabbat and it is adds to the holiness of the day, because Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah are already holy, but it adds holiness. And then we don't say other prayers. So, for example, one famous prayer, Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. It's not appropriate to say on Shabbat, because, and then the 13 attributes, sometimes, we're talking about what God does for us, but on Shabbat, we don't ask God to do anything. We don't work on Shabbat, so we don't say those prayers. So there are very subtle differences when a holiday falls on Shabbat, definitely.
Okay, next question, and I'll try to ask as many as I can. So one person had asked, well, I noticed that you're signing holiday, high holidays, but not saying it's a holy day. So what's the sign that you all typically use to refer to the high holiday? So it's the sign for holiday and not holy day? Ellen?
Sometimes I just say high holy holiday. What does other people say? I prefer to say days of awe, to follow the Hebrew, the Yamim Noraim. So then just to translate that into ASL, I'm sure there are multiple ways to say the days of awe.
All right, next question. Someone had asked for Rosh Hashanah. That's the new year, but why does it start on the 7th day of the 7th month of the calendar? So shouldn't it start on the first day of the first month of the calendar? Rabbi Darby?
I'm enjoying sharing information. I always enjoy sharing information about the calendar because the Jewish calendar can be odd. The Hebrew calendar actually does fit with the Gregorian American calendar in many ways. So if you think about America, how many months do we have? How many New Years do we have?
One.
In the calendar?
One.
We just have one, right? January 1st. Okay, so that's the new year. And we actually change the number, right? So it'll be 2021. Do we have any other New Years in the Gregorian calendar? What about the school year? Don't we start the school year in September? My daughter is moving from 7th to 8th grade in September, not January 1st, and her 8th grade is going to be September to June. We have other New Year's as well. We have April 15th. That's the tax year. Taxes are due from the previous year. And yes, it stops in January, but we send our return to the government April 15th. So that's the tax year. So the Hebrew calendar is similar. There are 4 New Years in the Hebrew calendar. So Rosh Hashanah is the new year for the changing of the number. It's like January 1st. It's when we change the new year.
Okay. Thank you for your responses. One person had asked that on Yom Kippur, my parents had asked me to watch my younger siblings, which is very important to do on Yom Kippur. But
when you daven,
do we ask for forgiveness? Wait 1 second. I'm sorry, I got the question cut off here. So on Yom Kippur, my parents had asked me to watch my younger siblings. I know that's important to do on Yom Kippur, but so can we daven and also ask for forgiveness? I always feel guilty for not having enough time to daven, but also having to watch my younger siblings. So can we do both on Yom Kippur? All right, who wants to answer that? Anyone? I guess I'll just tell them to reach out to you directly. Maybe you can answer them personally. No. Rabbi Sudakov, you want to answer that?
Yeah, maybe I can just share a short story. I am part of the Chabad movement. Chabad has many generations of rabbis. So there's one famous story from the founder of Chabad. So one year, it happened on Yom Kippur, where the whole community came to synagogue ready to pray, and there was no rabbi. And so they waited and waited for hours for the rabbi. And they finally found the rabbi at a poor woman's home who didn't have any money and who needed help chopping her wood for the fire. And this happened way back in Russia. And the point of this is that the rabbi had two choices: go to pray in synagogue with the whole community that was waiting for him, or help somebody in need. And which would you choose? Obviously, he chose to help someone in need. And so that helps us, if we don't seize an opportunity like that special opportunity to gift someone, we will miss it.
Wow, thank you for answering that question. Someone had asked, so what's the purpose of going to a cemetery to visit your loved ones before the holidays? What's the whole purpose behind that? Rabbi Darby?
I don't want to feel like I'm monopolizing here. Anybody else can answer as well. But what I'd say is Judaism has many, many different traditions or rituals. And one of the things that is so important, one of the values of Judaism is memory and remembrance. And so when somebody passes, it's extremely important that we remember them. And so we have special prayer for them 4 or really 5 times a year. So 3 times on the 3 key Jewish festivals. So Sukkot, Shavuot, and Pesach. And I'm sorry, I'm going a little quick because I have time. And then also on the Yahrzeit, which is the anniversary of that person's death. So we have the Yizkor prayer, we light the candle, and then the 5th time is on Yom Kippur. And it is customary to pray for this person and take the time to light the candle and remember this person. And it's also customary to go to their burial site and spend time there remembering this person and actually connecting with them because they had an impact on your life. And so it's an opportunity for you to share stories about this person with your other loved ones and family members. And so that has become customary to visit the grave. Again, that prayer is said 5 times a year.
All right, so I know that we are running out of time, so we are going to limit it to only having 3 final questions. First, why does Rosh Hashanah happen before Yom Kippur? Wouldn't it make sense if we ask for forgiveness and then after that point we start a new year and celebrate? So why does it happen in the order in which it lies? Anyone want to answer that? Anyone? Ellen?
I don't actually have what I would say the real, I don't have a definitive answer, but I'll share my understanding that the Jewish calendar follows the lunar calendar. It follows the moon. And so it's the new year because you're following the lunar calendar. And Yom Kippur because of the position of the earth and when it's closest really to the sun. So astronomy hasn't, I don't think, proven that, but I believe that's the reason. But maybe you can add to that, the rest of you. I'll add just another perspective, another frame on that. So Yom Kippur purpose is to ask forgiveness from God. But first I have to acknowledge the relationship with God throughout the year. right? There are times maybe when I forgot that I have that relationship or the love between us. I think Marla mentioned, oops.
Oh, 1 second. Okay. Yep, you've been spotlighted. So can you just repeat that?
Right, so I think that Marla had mentioned the Torah as a love poem. Was it Marla? I mean, or
No,
was
that
it?
was Ellen. That was Ellen. Yeah.
Right, that it's God's love letter, that the Torah is God's love letter to us. And I love that. So first, we have to acknowledge our relationship with God, because sometimes we do forget. And Rosh Hashanah is that day that we acknowledge that relationship, that we actually have a relationship with our Father in heaven, that we have a relationship with God, our King. And from there, then we can start talking about forgiveness between us. And so that's why Rosh Hashanah is first, and then Yom Kippur.
Wow. So inspiring, for what you shared in that story. The next question is that, I've been dying to ask this question of someone. I finally had the chance to ask it. Can you explain the difference between davening and prayer? And then also what with meditation? What's the difference with the three? Now, do you need time to think about that before I answer? Yeah, Rabbi Darby?
Well, the difference really is in language. So prayer in Hebrew is tefillah. And there's a really in-depth answer, but I'll try to make this brief. Judaism, Jews are never brief. But so tefillah is the Hebrew word. And we have tefillah that is passed down from generations to generations. It's collections of psalms, Jewish texts. We have prayers that we use daily. We have prayers that we use on Shabbat, prayers we use on holy days. And so, when we're talking about those texts or different actions, we express prayers. Some of them we say out loud, maybe in spoken language or sign language. So we're expressing the prayer as well as doing the action. The Yiddish word davening is a Yiddish word, and it actually means the same thing. So it means to pray. So we have English prayer, we have Yiddish daven, and then meditation is a little bit different. It's more from Eastern cultures, and meditation is more about how you quiet the mind. Because our minds are always busy with thoughts. Maybe we have our errands and our to-do list on our head, in our mind. And so meditation is about focusing on our breath and quieting the mind. So training ourselves and our mind to focus just on our breath. And when a thought comes up, we push away that thought, let it go, continue focusing on our breath. And we do that continuously. So there's a lot of history and significance and spirituality in that activity. It's not an actual way of praying in Judaism, but you can insert meditation in some Jewish prayers. So we do have some Jewish prayers that repeat the words over and over, and it's very meditative. And it is a way to, to focus on Hebrew word or Hebrew letter, helps us meditate. So meditation is more of mindfulness and quieting the brain. And hopefully that brief explanation helped clarify.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said. So the last question, and this is more of a follow-up question. If you remember, the question was asked, so if my parents are asking me to take care of my younger siblings and I don't have time to daven, is it okay to not daven? Is that fine? Yeah, Rabbi Sudikoff?
Right, so when I told that story about the rabbi, I'm not saying you shouldn't pray or you shouldn't daven.
No, sorry. Can I get the camera back on me again? I'm sorry. Not about I don't have to or I just don't need to. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, if my answer would be the same. So when it comes time where you have to make a choice then the choice, you know, obviously it's more important to care for somebody's life. And really, davening is a gift. And so it's not something that we have to put up with. I know some of us as deaf and hard of hearing people have struggled a bit with prayer because of our disconnect with the language and not being able to hear the sounds of the prayer. But really, and yes, Rabbi Darby was adding, a lot of hearing people don't understand it either, but especially for us as deaf people, you know, we've felt disconnected, but prayer is really a gift of communication with God. It's a gift, and those words are tradition. They've been passed on through our families and through the years. It's the same concept and the same words that have been passed on from generations to generations. And so it's a gift. So whenever we can, we ought to daven.
Beautiful.
Amen.
So I did want to share that this recording is not going to be done away with. This will be uploaded on the Jewish Deaf Congress website, and just give them about a week to make that happen. But look for that, probably in a week or so, it'll be posted there. We're now going to break into smaller groups, but before we do that, let's see if there are any closing remarks from our panelists, and if we can keep it very brief, like 15 to 30 seconds at max for your closing comments. We'll go down the line and see if there's anything else you'd like to share. Who would like to go first? I know that you're thinking about how you can synthesize anything into 15 to 30 seconds. Maybe I'll just go ahead and pick somebody. All right, so I will pick based on what happened the last time. We'll work backwards, and we'll start with Rabbi Sudikoff.
All right. So I think that this time of year can be a stressful time for many of us, but the secret is to look at every moment as a gift and an opportunity, and as a choice of choosing goodness. And so as we go through planning for the holidays, cleaning, inviting guests, although this year because of COVID, maybe not, still really taking a moment to appreciate every moment, because every moment is sweet, and that is our goal.
And next we're going to go to Ellen.
You're asking us to wrap up and say something in closing?
Yes, share your closing comments with the group.
Well, I hope that this was informative for you, and Judaism can be a mystery, and once you start discovering it, there are just so many stories. One of my favorite stories is from the Talmud, which is 700 years of collection of human conditions and human stories, and like King Solomon with, you know, two mothers, one who was barren and one who had kids, and you know, the mother who really wanted her baby to live, and the other who was, you know, just arrogant about, you know, having kids. And then Hannah gave up her baby Solomon to God. So anyway, there are just so many wonderful stories, and this was wonderful. I hope it was wonderful for you all as well.
Rabbi Darby?
Yeah, I want to thank Jewish Deaf Congress, JDC. I want to thank you so much, as well as Hillel Gallaudet for this opportunity, and JDRC, and Jacob, you specifically. Thank you. You were a wonderful moderator. You know, as Jews, you know, sometimes we, you know, talk too much, but you did a fantastic job of moderating all of us. And so I wish all of you a sweet new year, and Elul begins very soon, next week. So you have 1 week, I think 1 week, let me just think, yeah, 6 days, 6-ish days, Elul will begin. And so I really encourage you all to think about doing something different this year, and doing something out of your routine. Maybe you do the same thing every fall, but I challenge you this year to do something different and to practice in a different way. Maybe, you know, the first day of Elul maybe didn't mean anything to you in years past, but this year you will give attention to that day. And think about that 1 month leading up to Rosh Hashanah, and think about reflecting and doing just something a little bit different. So challenge yourself to do something with the Jewish high holidays this year.
And then Marla to
Oh, what everybody said, Rabbi Sudikoff, Ellen, Rabbi Darby, I would just say that as well. I wish you all a sweet new year. Thank you. Thank you to JDC, to JDRC, to Gallaudet Hillel, and to Jacob for moderating this panel. Thank you so much. It was such an honor to be part of this. And I just want to emphasize what a gift this is to have Jewish deaf people come together in this medium here to have this conversation. It's just so beautiful, truly beautiful and amazing. And just the fact that we made this happen, this, you know, I've been imagining this for so many years. In our own local communities, we've all worked to create this. And then tonight, look at this, we're all together having this dialogue about the Jewish holidays together and experiencing this together. So I just hope that tonight was inspiring for you all and that you are inspired to get involved and involved in a Jewish life, because you can, it's possible. You know, look at this virtual environment here. It is possible. And maybe now is the time, and there's no excuse. No excuses. Seize the moment. And look forward to the dates that are coming up. So WSJD is hosting, I think, the next event, I believe.
We'll be showing you the slides. Yep.
Jacob's going to show you the slides with the dates. So don't miss it. Don't put it aside. Join us. Join us on this journey together. Thank you. Thank you for participating tonight.
So with that, I mean, kudos all around. Such a wonderful job. I want to thank all of our panelists. And even Rabbi Sudikoff, who's in Israel, I know what time of day or time of night it is, and didn't, you know, you have kids to take care of and kids that are being born. So beautiful job.
It's 2 a.m., but it's worth it. No, I was saying it's 2 a.m., but it's worth it.
So at this time, and I have to say that I thoroughly enjoyed serving as your moderator. You know, growing up, I never met a deaf rabbi. It wasn't until much later in my life that I finally met a deaf rabbi. And there was that connection that was so different, even though I grew up in a very, very robust and Jewish cultural, upbringing. There was a different connection, such a deeper connection with meeting people who are deaf who are also rabbis. So I want to thank the Jewish Deaf Congress for hosting tonight's event and for partnering with Gallaudet Hillel and also the Jewish Deaf Resource Center. Thank you for your support. Next, I'll be showing you a slide here in a minute with some of the information, and we'll get us ready for our breakout groups. And that's really a time for you to come together in smaller groups and to plan for the high holidays and to engage in conversation and to ask each other any last minute questions that you might have. So there's going to be 4, but don't worry about this. We're going to have another opportunity for you to be able to engage further. But this is just to give you a sense of what this work is all about and the different events that will be taking place. But if you have any questions, feel free to make note of those, and then we can send them in to JDC or Roz Rosen. You can send her an email, and I'll be sharing that email address with all of you to send in whatever it is that you've noted from your breakout groups. For those of you who do not sign, we will have interpreters here in the main room. So if you get a message that says you are to be in a smaller breakout group, just stay here in the main room, and we'll make sure that we take care of you. So thank you to the interpreters. Thank you to all of you for joining us this evening, and thank you to our panelists.